Imagine coming home before Christmas, expecting your child to be watching TV, her shoes by the door and her favorite band posters still hanging in her room, only to discover she's gone, vanished without a trace. That's exactly what happened in the chilling, real-life mystery at the heart of Dateline: A Secrets Uncovered, Season 15, Episode 14, titled Footprints in the Snow. This is a story that rocked an entire town, haunted a family for decades, and saw investigators chase shadows and suspects from one generation to the next until a bombshell break finally revealed the heartbreaking truth. Let's dive into the full story of Janelle Matthews, the bubbly 12-year-old girl from small-town Colorado, whose disappearance turned a sleepy community upside down. I promise, this one will stick with you long after the credits roll. So let's get started. It was December 20th, 1984, in Greeley, Colorado. Back then, this was one of those classic Midwestern towns. The kind where people left their doors unlocked and treated their neighbors like family. The Matthews family had moved from California chasing just that sense of safety for their daughters, Jennifer and Janelle. Their lives were full of regular routines. Mom Gloria had just gone to visit family. Dad Jim was juggling work and his daughters' busy schedules. Janelle, the youngest, was living for Christmas. She'd been practicing for her school's honor choir concert, the last big event before the winter holidays. On the fateful night, Janelle's best friend Deanna and Deanna's dad, Russ, gave Janelle a ride home after the show. They dropped her at around 8:30 p.m. and watched as she walked in through the garage, flicking the light switch on and off, a secret code to let them know she was safely inside. By all accounts, everything seemed totally normal. But when Janelle's dad Jim came home, an hour later, the house was quiet. No TV, no chit-chat, just silence. He expected Janelle to be there, but her favorite shoes were inside, and none of her other pairs were missing, almost as if she'd never planned to leave. Soon, her older sister Jennifer returned home, and still there was no sign of Janelle. That's when the family went from concern to full-blown panic. Jim began calling around to friends, retracing every possible step. When nobody could remember seeing Janelle after she went inside, he called the police. Officers arrived quickly, and soon their once lively home was crawling with investigators and fingerprint technicians. But the clues were baffling. No signs of struggle. Nothing missing from the house. But they did find something strange in the snow outside the house. Shoe prints led up to the windows, as if someone had been peering in. Even weirder, a rake from the garage had been used to try and cover those prints. As word of Janelle's disappearance whipped across town, panic set in. People started locking doors, patrolling the streets, and warning children. Greeley's innocence was shattered overnight, and the police began an exhaustive search, scouring the neighborhood, interviewing everyone, even Janelle's choir friends at school. Still, no real leads emerged. Everyone, from her best friend Deanna to her teachers, insisted Janelle would never have run away, especially not right before Christmas, her favorite time of year. So the list of suspects got uncomfortably close to home. The last adult to see Janelle, Deanna's dad Russ, was questioned heavily, but his story checked out and he cooperated fully. Police then began scrutinizing Jim Matthews himself, the dad who, by their account, behaved a little too calmly and failed a polygraph test. There were no boot prints matching his shoes, but police couldn't rule him out. Suspicion lingered, both in the community and even in the Matthews' own church. While the investigation was spinning its wheels, Janelle's family and friends refused to give up. They created a group called Rescue Janelle, plastering posters everywhere, and even getting Janelle's story mentioned in a televised address by President Reagan. Leads poured in, hundreds and then thousands, but nothing broke open the case. As the years stretched on with no progress, Christmas became a season of sadness for the Matthews family. The gifts that Janelle never opened gathering dust under the tree. Fast forward 5 years after the disappearance. The case was reassigned to Detective Keith Olson. He discovered that, astonishingly, nobody had properly investigated a neighbor across the street, Norris Drake, who was reportedly home that night. Drake had a criminal record and a disturbing history, including violence against women and specific statements about hiding footprints and being obsessed with young girls Janelle's age. There was a brief surge of suspicion, but ultimately no physical evidence. And with no body, prosecutors' hands were tied. For decades, the case went cold. It changed hands from investigator to investigator, each hoping their fresh eyes might spot something previous teams had missed. Enter Detectives Cash and Prill in 2013. After re-examining tens of thousands of pages, they noticed an odd character lurking in the records: Steve Pankey. He had once worked at the Matthews Church, had connections to both Janelle's family and the last known adults to see her, and, bizarrely, had made repeated calls to police over the years, hinting that he knew something but never quite coming clean. Pankey's ex-wife, Angela, delivered a flood of revelations when interviewed. She remembered Pankey suddenly insisting on an unscheduled trip days after Janelle's disappearance and being obsessed with news reports about the missing girl. He returned home, acted jumpy, and started digging in their yard. The more detectives unraveled about Pankey, the conflicting stories, his frequent lawsuits, even running for public office, the more they suspected he was inserting himself into the case out of guilt. Then, in 2019, a construction crew miles out of town unearthed human remains. Braces on the teeth, clothing matching what Janelle wore that night, and a DNA confirmation revealed. Finally, the tragic truth. Janelle had been murdered, shot through the head, and left buried in the plains only a short distance from home. Her family and the entire community gathered to say goodbye, gaining a sliver of closure after so many years. With a body, investigators now zeroed in on Steve Pankey as the prime suspect. His movements, his weird alibi, and his obsession with the case became the backbone for a grand jury indictment. His ex-wife's testimony about his behavior at the time of the disappearance, and a note referencing raked snow, an unpublished detail only the killer could have known, became key evidence. The first trial in 2021 was tense and emotional. With no DNA, no weapon, and no witnesses, prosecutors leaned on mountains of statements Pankey had made about the case, his own words, revealing guilt by accumulation. Pankey took the stand in his own defense and insisted yes, he was a habitual liar who made things up to taunt police. But that didn't mean he was a killer. His rambling testimony only made matters more confusing. Angela's testimony, however, was powerful enough the prosecution said they couldn't have made the case without her. The trial ended with a hung jury. No conviction, no acquittal, but prosecutors pushed forward. Before the second trial, they gained 2 new bombshell witnesses, Detectives Debbie Moon, a woman who claimed Panky assaulted her years before Janelle's murder, and a jailhouse informant who testified that Panky had, in a moment of apparent remorse, confessed and asked for God's forgiveness for what he did to that little girl. This time, the jury needed less than 2 days. In 2022, Steve Panky was convicted of first-degree murder. For Janelle's family, the moment brought relief, joy, and sorrow all mixed together. They spoke at the sentencing, still unable to extend forgiveness to Panky for what he'd done, but grateful for the justice finally delivered. So there it is. Decades of heartbreak, dead ends, and dogged determination culminating in long, overdue justice for Janelle Matthews. It's a story about how communities can come together in crisis, about the agony of not knowing, and about never giving up on the truth. If this story moved you like it did me, let me know what you think. Do you believe justice was truly served? Drop a comment below, hit like if you want to see more gripping true crime recaps. Share this video to help more people discover Janelle's story. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a case breakdown like this one. Thanks for watching, and keep tuning in for more secrets uncovered.